This is a presentation for the Winnipeg Philatelic Society, Western Canada's oldest stamp club. And it's about how to collect stamps. What is the proper way to collect stamps? And it's something of an overview. Now, I guess the first rule is, if there is a rule, the stamps are not yours. You are holding them for the next generation, and any older stamp you have has been in the collections of 2 or 3 other people. So you kind of have a responsibility to take good care of the stamps so you can pass them on to the next generation. Now, the proper way to collect stamps is any way you want. I used to think that I collected stamps the proper way, probably because it was the way my dad did it. But when I joined the stamp club, I found that everybody does it differently. There are so many different ways to collect stamps and enjoy the hobby. So you can collect a country, all the stamps of Canada, though that's somewhat hard to do because the older stamps are perhaps expensive and hard to get, but you could collect all the stamps of Canada issued beginning in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, for instance. Some of the members of our club have collections of a single stamp and the many varieties of that stamp and the different uses of the stamp and the use of the stamp on an envelope or a cover. Some people collect an era, the Elizabethan era, the George VI era, whatever you want. Some people collect covers, which is an envelope with a stamp on it, and they have many different covers. They collect the postmark on the cover. They collect all the postmarks from Manitoba. They collect anything they want. They collect a topic. They collect a particular topic of stamps. So some topics, Harry Potter, for instance, if you decided you wanted to collect Harry Potter stamps, lots of countries have issued Harry Potter stamps. Here's a set of rather too many Harry Potter stamps issued by the United States. Here's some Harry Potter stamps issued by Great Britain. They have the cover of each of the books. And since this was issued, they've issued some more. The United States has issued some more. Lots of countries have issued them. You can decide which ones you want to collect, which countries you want to collect or not. It's your call. You could collect superheroes. Here are some superheroes from the United States. Canada's issued them too. Lots of countries have issued superhero stamps. You could have a collection of those. Part of the fun of this is figuring out which countries have issued superhero stamps to find the ones you might want to collect. Birds. Here's some bird stamps from Canada. Canada's issued lots of stamps with birds on them. So have many countries. Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh, named, of course, after Winnipeg. He was Winnipeg the Bear and became Winnie the Bear and became Winnie the Pooh. So here is a set of stamps that Canada Post issued. Obviously, they had to get permission from Disney, who owns the copyright. The first stamp in the upper corner there is the veterinarian who picked up the bear on his way to fight in the First World War, and he was from Winnipeg, and he named the bear Winnie, or Winnipeg. You could collect military stamps, so that was a Winnie the Pooh souvenir sheet. There are many Pooh stamps. Look up thematic stamp collection on the internet, and there are thematic stamp clubs, and lots of people collect thematic stamps. Now, tools of the trade. These are stamp hinges. The little box I got from my grandfather. And they're okay for used stamps. They are a little annoying if you mount your collection with stamp hinges and then you want to remount it. You'll find you've got 2 or 3 or 4 hinges on the stamp, and removing them can sometimes damage the stamp, and then you have to soak all those extra hinges off. But they're okay for used stamps, and they're cheaper. They're $5 for 1,000, so not that expensive, and it's a way to mount stamps. For mint stamps, and if there is a rule, this is the first rule. For mint stamps, you kind of have to mount them in these plastic mounts. They are $6 to $10 for 22, 25 millimeter strips. These you can see here are 27 millimeters. They range in size and price, and there are many different suppliers. These are Unisafe. They come either in black or clear mounts. So the back of these is black, and you can see these open in the middle. Others open at the top. Other than you kind of have to use these for mint stamps, otherwise the stamp drops dramatically in value, and a modern stamp, if it's hinged, is effectively unsaleable. I will get mail from a stamp dealer, and when I soak the stamp off the envelope, I find there's a hinge on the back. So he has purchased a stamp that was hinged and mint, and he's used it for postage because that's all it's worth. So depending, and as I said, an older stamp that may get moved around in your collection, you may decide to use these mounts so you don't put a hinge on the back of it and don't risk the probability of damaging the stamp when you take it out of your album or when you try to get the hinge off. So some people will use these mounts for all their collection, and it's collector preference between black and clear. And never, ever, ever, ever glue, Scotch tape, or any tape. You will destroy the stamp. The stamp cannot be removed. The piece of hinge cannot be taken off it. Scotch tape will eventually discolor the stamp. People have given me collections that were mounted with Scotch tape, and I've just had to throw them in the garbage. They're completely worthless. Always use either hinges or mounts, and I guess perhaps more and more collectors are heading towards using nothing but mounts, though they're, you have to cut them and you have to mount them, and taking them off the page in your album destroys the page, so you need a new piece of paper. But hinges or mounts. The second rule I guess you have is you should handle all stamps with tweezers, because over time, stamps have been around since 1840, so that's heading on to 200 years. Lots of people have handled the stamp, and you can get them dirty by repeated handling. So you should try to handle them all the time with stamp tweezers. There's several different types. These are kind of a straight tip. There are also spade tip. Tweezers cost $10 or so. You probably want a magnifying glass of some kind, because often there's tiny print on the stamp and you want to look at it. Stamps are pretty small. So if there are rules, this is probably the second one. Handle your stamps with tweezers to keep them clean. After that, the next tool, and this is your call. You're going to want to mount your stamps perhaps in an album, and there are many kinds. This is a page from a France stamp album. It's pre-printed, so that's good. You have a stamp and you're going, where does this go? Oh, here, I see the picture, and you can mount it. Now occasionally some of the pictures are going to look a lot alike. You may have to use a catalog to help you decide, but it's easy to decide where to put the stamp because there's a picture of it right there. Now the bad thing about it is this decides what you collect. So they may decide that there's a rather expensive stamp and they're going to put a picture of it on the page, and that's unsatisfactory because you'll never get that stamp and you'll always have an empty spot in your album. So it decides what you collect. It also may decide not to include a certain stamp that you wish to include, and then you can't put it in your album unless you just stick it in someplace. This is a page from one of my albums. I obviously use pre-printed albums. Now, Devo, for instance, I use Devo albums, but there are lots of different album brands. They are expensive. They are $200 to $300 each, and depending on the country you collect, there could be 5 or 6 or more per country. As countries issue ever increasing numbers of stamps per year. So you'll buy the 3 or 4 or 5 albums you need, and then you have to buy a new album and annual supplement pages. It's not cheap. The other thing you can do is you can have albums with blank pages, and I do that as well. Here's a page from my New Zealand album. I've decided which stamps to include. I've decided which stamps how to lay the stamps out. You can see I've put rather more stamps per page than on a pre-printed album. They try to be very artistic and pretty. This would probably be 2 pages in a pre-printed album. Up to you. I tend to, when I want to have more stamps on the page, I will use a blank page album. So I've decided how to lay it out, and I've decided what I want to collect. Now again, there are many kinds. There are 3-ring binders. There are various different kinds of binding of the albums. I use springback albums. I like them. They're easy to get the pages in and out, but that's my personal preference, and other people use different kinds of albums. There are 3-ring binder albums. There are lots of different kinds. New, they're $100 to $150. Though one springback album recently sold at our stamp club for $5. Somebody had one too many and sold it for $5. So that's one of the advantages of being a member of a stamp club. Stuff tends to be cheaper on the secondhand market. And there is a springback album. You can see you kind of bend the cover pages open and stick the pages in, so it's easy to move pages in and out. A stock book. You're probably going to need 1 or more stock books, and again, there are many kinds. Black or white pages. You can use this for storing your duplicates. You can use it for storing your stamps to mount, or you can decide that you're just going to have your collection in a stock book. Easy to put the stamps in and out. They've got little vinyl pockets that you put the stamp in. New, they're $50 or more. At our stamp club, a used one will sell for $10 or $15. They're hotly contested items because they're rather expensive new. Need a perforation gauge. There's mine. Cost about $5 to buy. How you get the stamps off paper, soaking. Now, it was that you got kind of hot water and you dumped a bunch of stamps in the water. You had to be careful, because if the paper they were on was colored, often envelopes for Christmas stamps or Valentine's stamps, the envelope is red. You put it in the water and the red color soaks off and wrecks your stamp, wrecks a couple of other stamps, so you have to be very careful how you do that. So then you took the stamps out, put them upside down on a piece of paper towel or something, and with care dried them off, put them in a stock book, sorted them out, and then put them in your album. Now, new stamps, because they're all self-adhesive, are much harder. Canada will still soak in water with care. You got to be careful that you get all the gum, the gucky gum off, and you don't want to soak too many at a time, because the gum on one stamp can sometimes get on the other, so you want to be careful. Removing U.S. stamps, you need a solvent. And you may decide you don't want to use a solvent. See the internet for how to get U.S. stamps off. Great Britain stamps, some still soak. The Machins and the current King Charles stamps are very hard to get off, but some people do. And so some people have just decided, well, that's it. I'm no longer soaking my used stamps. I will just mount my used stamps in my album on the paper from the envelope, and I'm not going to deal with this complexity anymore. You're going to need access to a catalog of some kind. Now, they're expensive. The Scott catalog new is around $600. It's in 6 or 12 volumes. They're very expensive to buy. Occasionally a used one will come across at an auction at our club, sell for $100 or so. If you're collecting Canadian stamps, the Unitrade catalog is a specialized Canadian catalog. They sell for around $60, and again, a couple of year old one might go for $10 at our club. The other thing you can do though is the library. The library tends to have the Scott catalog, and so you go and borrow it because you don't need it perpetually. You just need it as you're investigating a particular area or a particular country, and then you take it back, and if you need it again, you go check it out again. So the library is the inexpensive option if you need a catalog. Watermarks. I kind of don't care about watermarks. They are a bit hard to see. They apply to older stamps mostly. They were intended to help stop fraudulent stamps, which has apparently been an issue since the first stamp in 1840. Watermarks can make a huge difference in catalog value. If you look up a stamp that has a high catalog value, you need to be very careful about checking the watermark because you probably don't have that watermark. But you either put them in a bit of water and see it, or sometimes if you put it on a black surface, you can see it. I tend not to collect watermarks. I don't care. How to buy stamps. A stamp club. We have monthly auctions at our club. Lots of stamps pass through. Prices are pretty cheap. Tend not to find expensive stamps. We have an annual stamp show. You can go to the annual stamp show. Many dealers, including out-of-town dealers, come and buy stamps, see what they have, talk about the price. Internet, there's eBay, Delcamp, many dealers on the internet. Most are reputable. If you want to buy Canadian stamps and you want mint Canadian stamps, you go to the Canada Post website and you buy them there. They're about $100 a year. It depends how many stamps are issued. Lots of people at our club buy kiloware. They want a large bag of stamps, and their fun in stamp collecting is sorting through all the different stamps, finding different countries, finding different stamps, finding different postmarks. $5 to $10 at our club. Now, how much does it cost to be a stamp collector? Well, I compare it to going to an NHL hockey game. So 2 reasonably decent NHL hockey tickets, $240. Go out for dinner ahead of time. It's $150, $200 depending on the restaurant. At the end of the game, your 2 NHL tickets all have no value. So you spent $240 on something that you enjoy, a hobby, shall we say, being an NHL fan, and at the end of the game it's worth nothing. Now, when you are buying stamps, you are going to buy at some place between 30 and 50% of catalog value. And we have some other videos on what catalog value means and why you are buying at 30 to 50% of catalog value, because catalog value is for an absolutely, absolutely perfect stamp, and you're not buying one of those. So condition is very, very, very important. Now, when you're selling to a dealer having bought the stamp at 30 to 50% catalog, you should expect you're going to realize 10% of catalog value. So your collection in the end will be worth something, maybe not a lot. A dealer will probably not buy common stamps from you. They are going to be looking for older stamps. And by older stamps, I might even mean before 1900. But this is for fun. So you should look at your budget for stamp collecting in the context of how much would I spend on NHL season tickets? I'm going to spend less than that on my stamp collection. And maybe if I'm careful and I curate it carefully and I have it nicely mounted in albums, maybe I can sell it for a bit of money at the end. But maybe I can't, and maybe I don't care because I was doing it because it's a hobby and fun. Why might I join a stamp club? Well, it's fun. You talk to other stamp collectors. And when I joined the club, I thought I knew a lot about stamp collecting. I found out there were a whole bunch of people that knew a whole bunch more than me. And that was part of the fun of the stamp club, because there's lots of stamp collectors to talk to. And it's fun to find out what other people find interesting, even if you don't want to do it. Our monthly auctions are a big source of fun in the club, and I used to just go to the auctions because it was fun to watch the auction. Didn't buy anything for a long time. Finally got brave enough to buy something at an auction. Monthly auctions are fun. You can sell your stamps, you can buy stamps. We also have monthly presentations. Someone comes and makes a presentation on something that they find interesting about stamp collection. And I've always found someone, I read about what the presentations are going to be about, and I go, I'm not interested in that. Oh, well, okay, I'll go. Very interesting. Every time it's been interesting. Maybe I'm not motivated to collect that way, but every time it's interesting. We have a monthly newsletter. Once a year we have a member bourse. You get to be a dealer for a night and bring stamps that you want to sell and sell them to other members. Deals between you and the other member. We also have an annual stamp show in early May. Out-of-town dealers come. Local dealers come. There are exhibits. You can look at what other people have found interesting. Stamp unveilings, when Canada Post issues a stamp and it's related to Winnipeg in some way or other, they will have an unveiling. We get invited. You get a free first day cover. I've been to a couple or three. They're all very interesting. And then we have a library, we have a website, we have a Facebook page, we have a YouTube page, all kinds of reasons for joining a stamp club. And there's lots on the internet. There is, of course, our YouTube site that you're watching this on, Winnipeg Philatelic Society. We have a website. There's the website address. Other interesting websites on the internet, and there are tons of them, and these are just a few. virtualstampclub.com I kind of like. collectgbstamps.co.uk, that list shows all the new stamps issued in the United Kingdom. The SwedishTiger.com has a very extensive discussion of early U.S. stamps. It goes up to 1930 or 1940, but a very interesting website if you're interested in U.S. stamps. AntoniusRaw.com, that's a person that has an absolutely huge collection of stamps, and there are pictures of all of this huge collection. So sometimes when I've been trying to figure out a country or figure out what the stamps are, I've looked at that website and gone, wow, do they ever have a lot of stamps? And there are lots and lots and lots of different sites on the internet. There's, of course, the standard warning about the internet. But it tends to be, the stamp collecting on the internet tends to be self-policing pretty well. So, thanks for listening.